Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Talking Point here on the Rangers Review with me, Chris Jack, and my co-host and long-time compatriot, Stevie Clifford. Stevie, how are we?
I'm good, mate. Good, thank you. We did not have this show planned, or we did not have this topic of this show planned, that's for sure. So it's actually been a really interesting turn of events and certainly a busy few days, that's for sure. I'm sure I'm sure your phone's been as hot as my phone has been. Actually, it's quite funny because and everybody watching, whenever anything breaks, we're normally on the phone to each other. It's normally, what do you think of this? Or, right, we'll need to chase this. Or, we have a story, we'll need to go and look at this. And we both kind of text each other at the same time saying, let's get this figured out so we can watch the Champions League in peace. But it never really turned out like that, did it? Because we found out very quickly that this story had legs and it was of truth.
This story, of course, is the only show in town at Ibrox this week. It is, of course, the news that several Rangers shareholders are in discussions with an American consortium to purchase Rangers to herald in regime change, and of course that is the only place that we can go with the show this week. If you're joining us for the first time on the Talking Point, I know a number of you have signed up to the website over the last couple of days to keep up to speed with the latest developments in this story. I know a number of you have taken out the YouTube membership as well, so thank you indeed for that, and we hope that you enjoy what you find on the channel and on the show. If you are new to this show, we take an in-depth look at one of the big talking points of life at Rangers, and as Stevie said, there is only one place to start. You had a column on the site earlier this week, Stevie, looking at the fan reaction to the news that we reported on Wednesday night about this interest in a Rangers takeover. As you touched on there, your phone's been just as busy as mine. What have you made of the fan reaction? And you speak to a lot of people, you see a lot of social media stuff. There seems to be a real excitement and a real almost a weight off a lot of the fans' shoulders because there is something different potentially in the pipeline.
Yeah, excitement was the word I was going to use, Chris. I think that's fair. Although there's some caution, which maybe we'll come to in a minute, there is, I think, an overwhelming acceptance that something had to give. And it feels like there's an apathy in the support. We needed a shot in the arm. These are all things that I said in the column, and I believe it. As a support, we'd become accustomed, almost accepting of where we are, and that there wasn't very much that was going to change it, albeit, aside of a miracle. I think the boardroom have taken us, and the investors are maybe taking us as far as they can. And when you think about people like Dave King saying that, there's the investor fatigue and he wasn't investing, he's basically just sitting on shares that are just dormant, basically. Mm-hmm. So these are all things, and I don't blame him. There's not a blame culture for me on the boardroom with regard to if they decide not to put in anything or help anything. But I did say, and I made this point to you, that if they're not investing and if they're not doing anything with it, then they should step aside. And in all fairness to them, and it must be difficult, Chris, because these are Rangers men. I don't really care what anybody says about, yes, they've made mistakes, they're not infallible, but I really believe that they tried at least to do the best. So for them to step aside, it must be kind of heartbreaking as well as being, a bit of a gut-wrenching feeling because they're giving up something that they would love. And with all that said and done, you go back to the kind of fan opinion. Fan opinion towards the board had began to sway towards a really kind of negative position, and even probably further past negative. And you don't want to get into those stages, especially towards the Parks, rightly or wrongly. Dave King does seem to have a good reputation with his fans, and John Bennett not so much. But with all that said, I think the excitement levels amongst the fans is real. There's caution, there's questions to be asked. What's this going to entail? What's the plans of the 49ers enterprise group, etc.? What are they going to bring to the table? What's their plans for Rangers? What's the investment levels going to be like? What are they going to do with the debt that the shareholders have? If that's all going to be wiped, then great, because the amount of money Rangers are losing on that on a weekly basis, will help us immediately straight away as well. So it's a lot to it, Chris, I think, but there's a definite excitement and there's a definite hope amongst the fan base, that's for sure. But I'm gonna get this back to you because you've been really close to this story since it broke. And I'm keen to find out, how's this going to look? What's your early impressions or understandings of this with regards to what the boardroom's going to look like? Who's going to leave? Who will still be there once the deal is done? I'm really intrigued to find out the makeup, and I think everybody will be. Outline us for us, Chris. What's this all going to entail?
I think, as you kind of alluded to there, Stevie, the last few weeks there has been this, a few months almost, there has been this kind of sack the board mentality. And a lot of the time when people chant sack the board, they really mean the chairman. They want change at the top. That's been the case in previous demonstrations. That's always the case. And if you're going to say sack the board, you really mean go for the top. Changes have come at the top, obviously, of late. Fraser Thornton's obviously come in as chairman. Patrick Stewart has come in as a new chief exec and really been given a remit to run Rangers his way. I think we've discussed on shows and on the morning briefing how successful that has been in early impressions and that type of thing. But I expect both of them, if they want to remain part of this new era, once 49ers enterprises have taken control of Rangers, if they want their spots, they will get their spots. The other names around that boardroom table, we're going to see a lot of change there. I don't think it's going to be a complete wiping out of it. I think John Halstead at present looks the most likely to remain on that top table. But naturally, 49ers enterprises will want their own people, and they're not going to buy all these shares and then allow other people to go and run the club, especially when, again, as we've discussed of late, it's not been particularly well run in a business sense or in a football sense of late. So 49ers enterprises, they will have, I believe, at least two, possibly more, time will tell, of their representatives on the board. And I think we're going to see a real shift in how Rangers operate as a result. I know that there will be headline figures of X number of millions for a transfer kitty for the manager, and they'll do this in terms of investment in the squad. Of course, that's important. But I think we'll see a real shift in how Rangers operate in a commercial sense, in a marketing sense, perhaps in a PR sense. We can look at best practice in sports science and medical, and this opens up so many other avenues for Rangers. 49 enterprises also have their interest in Leeds United, but they've got a hugely successful interconnection relationship with the San Francisco 49ers. Very different game, but best practice is best practice. And I think that's what Rangers should be able to tap into. And that will be driven, as always, from the board level down. Saw Patrick Stewart talk this week about the new sporting director that's going to be appointed. And if Rangers can have the right heads, if they can have the right people as manager, as sporting director, as chief executive, as chairman, the right guys around about the boardroom that can bring investment or bring ideas, that certainly puts Rangers on a far more, a sustainable path, because the current path is not sustainable, throwing good money after bad for a number of seasons, but it should put them on a more successful path as well. So I think, as you touched on there, it's not a case of me of everything is absolutely terrible, these guys have to go, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to Rangers. I think it's just an acknowledgement that the time for change has come, and this looks like the best avenue for change.
Yeah, I would agree. This is why I spoke about it as well in my column, Chris. I don't like the term spivs when we talk about this current boardroom. I don't think it's fair. Have they been perfect? No. Have they made mistakes? They absolutely have. But I can't see that they didn't do it with the best intentions. It's just not worked. Mm-hmm. And I think not only have they become fatigued, the more it's went on, I think they've lost a wee bit of drive and things like that as well. So I wanted to ask you something, a slight curveball in here, because I want to ask you about the legacy of the board and how you think they'll be. I want to ask you as well, throw in a little bit of a curveball here, Chris. Patrick Stewart's stance and his performance from him coming in, some things that you'd said, a you look at his statement this week when he talks about sticking to a plan and being very rigid and they know what they're doing and they'll not bend, takes a different turn now, in my opinion. There's extra significance to that now. What do you make of Patrick Stewart now that we know what is going on?
He's in a very strong position in terms of potentially having a lot of money to spend to do things the way that he wants them to be done. His budget and his potential outlook looks very different now, or will look very different in a couple of months' time when this deal is all concluded, to what he was sold on, if you like. Now, the job that he was given, the job that he's been doing, it's going to change quite a lot once you have new investors to keep happy, once you have a new sporting director in place. We know there's going to be discussion over the manager. I think we're both very much on record the same. We expect a new Rangers manager to be in place for next season. So if Patrick Stewart wants to remain as part of this, a part of this new era, of this new regime, I think there will be a place for him. His comments, I think it was actually the last question in his RTV the other day, they are saying want to get Rangers back to doing what Rangers should be doing, and that's winning. He said we won't settle for second. That should be a whole lot easier with this new investment and new drive and everything that we've outlined there. That should be a whole lot easier under this new regime than under a board and under an investor model that has just, as you say, it feels a bit stagnant. It feels like it's lost that enthusiasm, it's lost that drive. It's put a lot of money in over the years. I made this point a couple of times on shows this week, coming up to 10 years since regime change. Certainly remember that day very well. Worked all the way up to it, and also a lot of work was done. It was done after it, and I think it's important that people, now, if you think back 10 years, for all the criticism that you can give certain directors or certain chairmen, or for all the criticism that you can direct them for how money has been spent or decisions that have been made, as you stated earlier on, it was always done with the best of intentions. Now, they have made mistakes. They've made some very costly mistakes. They weren't doing it to harm Rangers. They weren't doing it to line their own pockets. They were doing it for very different reasons, and doing it for the right reasons. If you think back to 10 years ago, when Dave and John Gallagher and Paul Murray came in, Rangers was a shell of a club that it used to be, and a shell of the club that it is now. They walked into a real mess, and it was going to take time. It took too long, obviously, to get back to winning titles, and since that moment, they've not won enough. No one can dispute that, and I don't think anyone who's been involved over that 10 years, they won't justify what has been won and say, well, actually, we did a really good job because we won one league title and got to a European final and we won a couple of cups. They know that it's not been good enough, but it's not been for a lack of trying. And I think, and I hope that their legacy, if you like, as they look to hand over to this new regime, this could be one of their best actions of the last 10 years. They've done their bit. They've got Rangers back on an even footing. Yes, it should have been better, but I hope that it should be, or it will be framed differently in time, and that the kind of emotions won't kind of envelop people as much as they do now. Do you think is that a realistic thing? Or will people forgive and forget slightly, or do you think it will still be these guys were at the helm when X, Y, and Z happened?
I would like to think so. Because, do you know what? It goes back to a wee bit of what I said before. And I would love to think that these guys have acknowledged to themselves, we can't do anymore. And it would be worse for me if they dug their heels in and said, no, we're Rangers men and this is my club, and I will keep doing what I think, head down, ignore the noise and just carry on. They've maybe looked at this and this proposal on their table. I would love to think they've said, these guys are going to do more than what we can possibly do. This is the best thing for our football club. We can go back and step aside and go back to being supporters again. And I would love to think that their legacy would be rescuing the club. The mid-level success that we had in terms of, or the middle success in terms of that league title, the European run, etc. I would hope that it would be looked upon fondly in time. There's always going to be negatives, always. I think surrounding things that have happened when you think about some things that have happened, to go without a chairman, to go without a CEO, the problems at the stadium, Edmondson House taking so long, even basic stuff like statues being year over, and these are things that frustrate. But if their legacy is stability in terms of the earlier regime of taking that away from the 2015, and we know that when they went in, there was so much to unpack and untangle. A lot of it they've tried and negotiated, some of it not very well, but I still can't be too hard on these. I know they've made mistakes, right? And I'm not an apologist in them, and I just find it really difficult to be, and say that, no, I'm delighted they're out the club and everything else. The time's right, and I am pleased that we've come to this kind of conclusion led by them that it's the best time. But I don't feel it's right to 2-foot them. It just doesn't sit right with me. And I know that for some people, they want to be rubbished and they want to be out the club and all that. I do want them out the club because I think the time's right. But for me, I just hope that their legacy in years to come is that they sold at the very right time, Chris, and their legacy being that they took us to the next bit. They couldn't do it themselves, so their acknowledgement was, as supporters, we're going to hand it over to people that can, and to lead us on to something that will be exactly that. We were the bridging gap to, sometimes with a football manager, he can only take you so far. You know what I mean? And then you need somebody to take you the next step. And I kind of hope that this is what it's going to be like, Chris.
We did a show, I think it was around about Christmas time or heading into the new year, and we spoke about what's our ambitions and what do you hope to see from Rangers. We didn't really, I think we probably joked about fresh investment and this type of thing, but I don't think we assumed that it would come out within like 10 weeks or so. But one of the points that we both made was Rangers to act like a normal football club, for Rangers to act like a big football club, for Rangers to get back doing Rangers things. That's obviously winning games, winning trophies, most importantly, signing the right players, being good in the transfer market, dealing with people in the right way. And I think that's one of the key things for this new regime. There is room for improvement in so many areas. There's scope for them to come in and make a big impact. What do you see being almost the most important thing that we've mentioned on shows about communication and taking the fans with you? They're going to have the fans with them. I know there's rightly questions about, will season ticket prices go up? Will they cut allocations? Will they make merchandise more expensive? There's all these things of what will the match day experience look like? And I think Rangers fans they're right to question anyone that comes in. If any support should be questioning any director, investor, chairman, it should be the Rangers fans, given what they went through pre-2015. So Rangers fans, I think, will ask the right questions. They will demand proper answers. Is that communication factor with the fans, even though the 49ers enterprises, they won't really have to sell themselves, because I think people are already on board, but they have to be aware, I think, that the fans will only come with them will they see something to actually continue to buy into. So they might not have to sell it too much, but they do still have to keep the fans on board here.
Look, ultimately, you and I both know that the first thing is you get it right on the pitch. I think everybody's looking for that. Rightly or wrongly, I think 90% of the fan base will look for managerial change. And you and I both know that I don't think it really matters what happens towards the end of the season. I don't think we're expecting massive European success. I think that whatever happens in the league, I don't think that can make a difference. I don't think we can win it now. I think you've got about a 1% chance there of a collapse, which would be wonderful. But I don't really see it. And I don't see Rangers putting a sustained period together. I think that there's too much water under the bridge there. So they will look for change there. They will look for leadership on that. They will look for money being spent on players. But the thing with money being spent on players, I don't think anybody looks at it and says, right, we're going to have 100 million. Mm-hmm. It's about getting 20 million like the last couple of summers and spending it properly. I think that's the kind of thing the support are looking for. They're looking for a normalization of this football club. That means things just working, having a ticket office you can rely on, having a commercial department that runs smoothly, having a corporate department that runs well. When you go and get that match day or Rangers experience at anywhere within the club, it's thriving, it's vibing with a nice positive atmosphere. It's everything you want it to be. They want Ibrox to get some TLC. I think that's right there. They could make instant wins by outlining plans of what they're going to do. But when they outline those plans, it's very important they stick to them. Because if you tell us something, make sure you're telling us and it's going to work and you're going to stick to it. Because we've heard a lot of things that have not happened. If you come in and outline to us that you're going to give the stadium some much needed refurbishment, you're going to, give it some TLC, as I said, then make sure you stick to it. Make sure we can see that, because these are the little wins that people want. It'll bring them with you automatically. Mm-hmm. We're going to paint the stadium. We're going to fix the things that you've asked to do. And then before we know it, it's done. People are like, well, hang on. The bluster of before is actually being carried out. And I don't mean that as a negative. We've heard a lot and we've maybe not seen it. These are the wins for me, Chris, that they can do. And it goes back to the word that we used on that show at New Year, normalising this football club. Then the stuff on the pitch, you hope, is already underway and taking care of itself. And I think in order for that to happen, I think a managerial change, unfortunately, in my mind at least, is going to have to happen if you want a fresh start for the investors. And this goes, and it maybe makes more sense because it goes back to the Patrick Stewart stuff. Mm-hmm. If you think about how long this has been going on for, I'm not sure that Patrick Stewart would be unaware of this whole thing going into the job. And when he talks about a plan and sticking to it, not deviating under the hood of the football club and what's happening. So that, for me, I think they all kind of can be relevant at the same time as well. So I think there's been a lot going on. And what I'm trying to get at is Patrick Stewart's words about sticking to a plan and normalising things. I think that's the reason why Philip Clement is still there. Because effectively, no matter what is going to happen, and Queen's Park shows you that, he's here to the summer, because at the summer we'll have regime change and then they can make the decision. Because there's no point in us bringing in somebody and then 6 months' time they go, not 6 months, 3-4 months. Mm-hmm. It is now. They go, we don't want him in the first place. So a lot of these things that have happened for me now are starting to be more relevant or more make more sense than they did 4 weeks ago when I couldn't understand why we weren't taking action. So makes a wee bit more sense to me now.
On a football front, we'll be at Ibrox for the FS at Mum game. Safe to say, a couple of days ago, I don't think there was much appetite for it. Certainly, events at Tynecastle last week, yes, it was a win, but Rangers were really poor again. And there's this kind of feeling of the season just kind of petering out. There's nothing to play for. Yes, Europe offers Rangers a chance of progression, but domestically, there's a number of games left, and there's nothing riding on them. Now, I know the old cliche of there's no friendlies and every game's a must-win, and the manager will still want results and performances, but that jeopardy's not there, because as you mentioned earlier on, it's a 1% chance of Rangers winning the Premiership this season. I think this will give the Ibrox crowd a bit of a shot in the arm. I think it will give people a real boost. That's not to say that everybody's suddenly going to be bouncing in to Ibrox saying it's Mirren, let's go and put on a real show. This is going to be great. But I expect a different kind of feel round about the stadium on the back of this. Made this point speaking to a couple of guys over the last couple of days. Even just online, what we've seen, and speaking to friends and family that are Rangers fans, there's just a different feel about it. Even on the morning briefings this week, we've had a bit of a laugh and a joke. Derek's had his Make Rangers Great Again hat on, and he's been dressed like Alexi Lalas. And it's just that there's a different, it's just nice to have a bit more of a light-hearted couple of days rather than, as we've done for so often this season, both on this show and on the briefing and the post-match shows and on the things that I've written on the website, it has been negative because there's been very few positives to be found. What kind of impact do you expect this to have actually on the end of the season? It's not going to turn Rangers into champions this season, but it at least gives the fans a wee bit of something to perhaps look forward to, a wee bit of light at the end of the tunnel. You touched on the manager there. I think, as we both said, we expect a change there. Some of these players potentially playing for their places and playing for the future now as well, though, because if we expect a new manager to come in, he will be looking at how do they perform, how do they react, who do I want to keep, who do I want to bring in. There's a lot, even though there's nothing at stake in terms of silverware, these games do still carry a level of importance for a number of these players now, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And they always should, Chris, regardless of what's going on. They should be playing for their future every single time that they step beyond that white line. So I think, going back to your question about the fans, what does it give us? It gives us an enthusiasm. I would hope that there's a buzz about the stadium, people asking the guy next to them, what have you heard? What's happening? You know, that kind of stuff we've not had in a very long time. And you know what? It allows us to have an imagination, right? And by that, I mean that, see, for the last few years, and especially for the last, even if you want to shorten that and say this season, the last few months, we all know what we're getting. Come the summer, we're going to have to sell X, Y, Z. We're going to have to be careful with our money. We're going to have to pick up bargains. We're going to have to do this. It allows us to have a wee bit of imagination to say, do you know what? Maybe we might get a £5 million player in the summer. Maybe we might get two. You know what I mean? Maybe we might get a new management team. Maybe we might get this structure in the football club that we're looking for. So no, I'm hopeful that from a supporter's point of view, there'll be a more enthusiastic and a more vibrant atmosphere within the stadium, that's for sure. As for the rest of the season, we know what that entails. We know where we are with it, Chris. The players absolutely playing for their future. I think that's certainty. I think that's very fair. But with regard to that should have been happening anyway, and it certainly should have been happening after the last few weeks. So yeah, I'm hopeful. That imagination thing for me, ever since this broke the last couple of days ago, things have been very rigid at this football club for a long time, in terms of we know where we are, we know what we're getting, we know what we're going to have to do. All of a sudden, there's possibilities. I am dreaming, Chris, of an infrastructure, a football club that's all joined up, corporate executives know what they're doing, head of departments know what they're doing, they're all joined up. We all know what X, Y, and Z in the restaurant's doing, because that's the guideline of the football club. When you go in, you get this proper experience. Ibrox is fresh, it's vibrant, people are happy to be there. It's not like that at the moment. This is what I'm dreaming of. This kind of collectiveness as a football club, the atmosphere in the stands, everything going towards the way it should be. So that's my hope. That's what I'm really hoping for. An infrastructure that we can build on. I really want stadium expansion and all that kind of thing. I think that's really important long term. At the moment, the quickest thing is fixing the football club, the immediate wins, get the stuff on the pitch sorted, and then going from there. And Chris, I know we're about to finish. But I want to ask you something, because you've asked me and I've not heard from you yet. How do you feel about this takeover? Aside of the job you do, you've been a Rangers supporter all your life, and you've been really close to these stories both in 2015 and now. They're major milestones for the football club. But I'm keen to know what you feel and how you feel, because you've asked me, but I'm, aside of you're the one with the knowledge about stuff and we come to you to ask you, I want to put that to the side and ask you, put your hat on as a supporter. How do you feel about the board? How do you feel about this movement, this time, and what's your thoughts on it from not a professional point of view, but you as Chris?
I think I've summed it up well there. It gives Rangers fans a light at the end of the tunnel. It gives them a level of enthusiasm, of excitement. It gives them something different. As you touched on there, the guys that have been involved in various boards and in this regime over the last 10 years, Been lucky enough to get to know a number of them, work closely with a number of them, some less closely than others, but really enjoyed spending a lot of time with them and getting to know them, and they've been great to deal with. But like them and like you and like every Rangers fan, shared those frustrations at not winning more titles under Steven Gerrard, at how bad the Murty times were and the Pedro years were, shared frustrations at not being able to kick on after 55, shared frustrations and disappointments at how Michael Beale's tenure just unravelled and was so costly. I believe that Philippe Clement could have been the right man. I had this conversation with someone yesterday, actually. Believe that he could have been the right man, and still don't really know why it's unravelled and has gone the way that it's gone. So having been through all of that, have lived through all of that, I think this almost feels like the same as it did in 2015. It's a line in the sand. It's a moment where that period of Rangers history can be parked, can be put to one side, and this is now something. It's different. It's exciting. If you can't get excited by this, one, I'm in the wrong job, and two, you're supporting the wrong football club. It offers Rangers the chance to get back, as we said earlier on, and being Rangers, it gives them a chance to get back to winning matches, to winning trophies, to being successful, to giving supporters the moments that they all dream of. As I made this point to a couple of people last couple of weeks, the video that they show at Ibrox pre-match now to mark 125 years of the stadium. How many goals in that montage are from the last couple of years? There's a couple of Seville ones, 55 obviously. You're then going back to the Helicopter Sunday, and there's a lot of Walter ones, and then also like Sandy Jardine against Bayern Munich, I think, is in there. And it's all history. It's all quite far back. Where's your recent moments? We've not had enough of those moments, and I think this investment and this change, it gives Rangers a chance to create those moments again, and to get back, as we say, doing what Rangers should be doing, and that's winning titles and competing in Europe. So I think this is probably the most upbeat that we've been on one of these shows all season. I always laugh. I check the comments and you see how many people have watched the show, and also trying to gauge the feedback. And a number of people that say we're just two grumpy middle-aged guys who are just having a pop at everybody, a couple of grumpy Rangers dads. Why don't we cheer up? I think we've been quite open and honest over the course of the season. We said at the start of the campaign when we launched this show, we're not going to duck the big issues. We'll call it as we see it. I think we've done that. I think we've been firm but fair. But I think this is probably we're approaching 33 minutes, and this is the most upbeat and happy that we've been. So if the Americans have given anything so far, it's changed the mood of the talking point.
It certainly has. It's funny. Ian Ferguson used to say, "I only drink when Rangers win." Well, we only smile when Rangers win, and we haven't had much opportunity to do that. And yeah, look, maybe the Jack and Victor of the Rangers podcast world, but Chris, we've become really close mates, as well as sharing this kind of journey as Rangers fans, and everybody knows, and I would hope that everybody knows just by watching this show, the only thing that we kind of strive for is, and we want is the best thing for Rangers Football Club, and that ultimately is results. It would be really nice to be standing next to you on the gantry at one of these points where we actually are doing well, and we do things. So these are all kind of normal things for supporters, but we have them as well. We're the same as everybody else, and yeah, we have a job to do. But I would like to come on to this show and talk about and do a 2-week catch up and talk about 6 goals by our main striker and things, because we're at the top of the league, and that nervousness of oh no, we're going up to Tynecastle in a couple of weeks, or we're going to Pittodrie in a couple of weeks. That nervousness, we haven't had that in a long time, and I want that to return. Those big games, those moments where you wake up in the morning and you're like, all right, okay, today's this one. And that's the thing I've missed. And hopefully, these things will start to happen over the next couple of years, and this show will become one where we go from Jack and Victor to something a bit more cheerier. But the comments are good. The thing is, and I hope that people know, at least by watching it, what you're seeing is at least real. So if you're seeing that kind of reaction from us, it's because it's real and how we're feeling. But the feedback, the comments and things are great, and yeah, it's been a good episode. At least, as I said, I've needed an enthusiasm. I've needed a shot in the arm. I've needed something, Chris, and this may very well be it. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this is all going to unravel.
On that happy, open, and honest note, we will end there. If you've liked, obviously, as I always say at the end of these shows, if you like what we do here on the Rangers Review, please take out a subscription to the website. The numbers in the last couple of days have been remarkable. So I really appreciate all the support that you've shown us for coming on these shows, and also on the pieces we've had on the website. Stevie's done a couple of columns this week. So he's been kept busy. You can read my analysis piece on inside this deal. There's a couple of news lines on there, and there's certainly plenty more to come as this deal unfolds, and obviously as the campaign unfolds as well. So as always, thank you for your time, Stevie. Thank you for your time and your company, and we will join you again soon.